Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Wednesday, April 8th. Your reader for this hour is Mary Gilmore. Artemis heads back after moon mission. The Artemis II astronauts are on their way home, leaving the moon in the rearview mirror after becoming the first humans in more than 50 years to travel near Earth's celestial neighbor, setting an all-time distance record and completing the most important leg of their historic mission. The test flight will pave the way for a possible 2028 moon landing. The Artemis II astronauts traveled farther from Earth than any humans ever have, 252,756 miles according to NASA. The previous record was set in 1970 during the infamous Apollo 13 mission, which reached a distance of 248,655 miles. The Artemis II astronauts passed that milestone before 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on April 6th, and then went thousands of miles further, swooping around the far side of the moon. The Orion spacecraft came as close as 4,067 miles to the lunar surface. That altitude allowed the crew to see the full disk of our celestial neighbor as they witnessed lunar sights that no other humans, not even Apollo astronauts, have experienced in person. During the 7-hour close approach known as a lunar flyby, the crew, astronauts Reid Wiseman, Christina Koch, and Victor Glover of NASA, as well as Jeremy Hansen of the Canadian Space Agency, made observations of the moon's far side, which is permanently faced away from Earth. They relayed these observations in real time to a global live stream. The crew also came up with 2 names for craters on the moon. They proposed Integrity, the name they gave their capsule for a crater on the far side of the moon, and the crew proposed the name Carol, the name of Wiseman's late wife and mother of their 2 daughters, for a bright spot on the moon, on the near side of the boundary with the far side, which can be seen at times from Earth. Carol died in 2020 at the age of 46. Hansen's voice broke as he spoke at that moment, and Wiseman and Cook could be seen wiping away tears. The feed went briefly silent as all 4 of the astronauts moved into a group hug. To top off an incredible day of space travel, the Artemis II crew witnessed a sublime solar eclipse, visible only to them and no one back on Earth. "We just went sci-fi," Glover said during the roughly hour-long eclipse. "It just looks so unreal." As they approached the moon, the astronauts heard a message Apollo 8 and Apollo 13 astronaut Jim Lovell recorded for them before he died in 2025. "Welcome to my old neighborhood. I'm proud to pass that torch on to you," Lovell continued in the message shared by NASA. "It's a historic day, and I know how busy you'll be, but don't forget to enjoy the view." With all that happening on April 6th, it's no surprise that April 7th was scheduled to essentially be a day off. The astronauts are now making a 4-day journey back to Earth, using our planet's gravity to naturally slingshot or pull Orion back home, negating the need for propulsion or much fuel. As of the morning of April 7th, the moon was about 25,700 miles behind the Orion spacecraft, with Earth still 242,100 miles away, according to NASA's online tracker. Once Orion blazes through the Earth's atmosphere, a protective heat shield will be cast off to make way for parachutes to deploy and slow the vehicle. The capsule will then make a water landing, likely on April 10th, in the Pacific Ocean near California off the coast of San Diego. Once the craft is in the water, 5 orange airbags will inflate around the top of the spacecraft and flip the capsule into an upright position. The crew is expected to exit the vehicle onto a U.S. Navy recovery vessel within about 2 hours. In U.S. territories, a lack of identity Many residents feel like outsiders who serve country but have limited legal rights. Kevin Mendez can still smell the scent of freshly baked bread wafting out of his local panaderia. He still hears the nighttime chirps of the coqui frog and pictures the skateboard-toting children crowding palm tree-lined streets at the end of the school day. When he closes his eyes, he dreams of his little slice of America. Mendez left his hometown, Fajardo, Puerto Rico, in 2020 to teach high school English in Maryland, but since the move, he said he's felt more than ever like an outsider. People view Puerto Rico as a kind of object, the 29-year-old said. It is the tropical vibes that people can go visit, but at the end of the day, they see it as lesser than. The lack of understanding makes him question his sense of belonging. I know that I'm part of America, but I feel even more Puerto Rican living in the U.S., he said. As the United States celebrates 250 years of independence, residents from the nation's 5 inhabited territories told USA Today they feel perpetually conflicted about their identity as Americans, given their distinct cultures and lack of full legal rights. Some expressed a desire for greater sovereignty and said recent U.S. military operations in Venezuela and Iran have rekindled long-simmering concerns about their lack of political representation in the federal government. The U.S. territories consistently have the highest rates of military enlistment per capita anywhere in the United States. Signs of the country's growing military presence abroad can be felt in Puerto Rico through the rumblings of military aircrafts overhead, in the Virgin Islands through the sight of Navy ships offshore, in Guam through the influx of troops stationed at its bases, in the northern Marianas Islands through the construction of new military training infrastructure, and in American Samoa through murmurs of the deployment of loved ones. Those living on the islands say the increased military operations have brought fears about security, environmental degradation, and economic trouble. To the mainland, we might be seen as a strategic asset. We might be seen as the tip of the spear, said Dean Meglangia, who lives on the island of Rota in the northern Marianas, but to us, this is home. The chain of 14 islands lies 6,000 miles west of Los Angeles and serves as a defense hub in the Pacific. The territory often feels an outsized impact from the tremors or geopolitical pivots, Magnola said. A unique American status. Sprinkled throughout the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean, the American territories are often advertised as vacation spots, tropical paradises surrounded by white sand beaches and turquoise blue waters with 5-star resorts dotting their coast. Each has its own history and culture. The majority populations range from Afro-Caribbean and Latino to Asian, Pacific Islander, and Indigenous. They each face unique challenges. The Northern Marianas' fragile economy, American Samoa's shrinking population, Puerto Rico's housing crisis, the U.S. Virgin Islands' frequent power outages, and Guam's infrastructure strain. Their relationships with the United States also vary. Residents of American Samoa, for instance, are considered U.S. nationals, not U.S. citizens, and lack rights given to other territories. Yet some see the problems these territories face as complications of the government structure under which they exist. The 5 territories are among 17 regions across the world, the United Nations says, that should be granted self-determination or independence. We occupy a very interesting place in the American imagination, but also in the global imagination, said Haidia Suar, director of the Virgin Islands Caribbean Culture Center. Because the U.S. is viewed as a beacon of democracy, it becomes difficult to fully grapple with the position of U.S. territories today. Annexation of the territories in the late 19th and early 20th century followed a history of U.S. expansionism that began with Thomas Jefferson's Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Unlike other lands that eventually gained statehood, the islands were given no guarantee of eventual political equality. They were added as unincorporated territories, a framework created by the Supreme Court through a series of early 20th century decisions that limited the constitutional protections given to the predominantly Black, Asian, and Indigenous islands. As part of its reasoning, the court argued that the territories were inhabited by alien races differing from U.S. in religion, customs, laws, method of taxation, and modes of thought. Legal scholars in recent years have suggested the legal framework used by the Supreme Court in the insular cases was racist and contrary to the Constitution. In 2022, Trump-appointed Justice Neil Gorsuch argued the decision rested on racial stereotypes and deserves no place in our law. That same year, the Supreme Court declined to hear a case asking it to overturn the insular cases. Seward, who had been involved in the discussions about the nation's 250th anniversary, said the territories, with their distinctive legal status, serve as spaces where we can understand the limits of democracy amid the year's celebrations. Very diverse questions. What does it mean to be an American? Anne Perez Hattori remembers studying U.S. history textbooks, putting together puzzle maps of the 50 states, and learning about maple trees and squirrels in science classes in elementary school. The textbooks never mentioned her home, Guam. The puzzles didn't stretch wide enough to show its location in the Pacific Ocean, closer to New Zealand than the mainland United States. And Hattori never saw deciduous trees or puffy-tailed rodents outside her window. From the time we're born, we learn we're American citizens, and we go to school, and we're using just standard U.S. textbooks. But you're not in any of the books, Hattori said. As you become an adult, you're just kind of used to this disconnection. Hattori saw the United States' influence on the island and its culture, as shirts from Macy's and Kmart began replacing the hand-sewn clothes her mother hung in her closet. And the Chamorro people, indigenous to the land, increasingly relied on processed foods like Spam amid military encroachment of farmlands. Today, the U.S. military occupies roughly a third of the island's land, and its presence is growing. The military has, over the last decade, been constructing a new base to relocate 5,000 Marines from Japan to Guam. The number of active duty troops in the territory is expected to grow from a 2024 level of 17,000 to nearly 24,000 by 2033. The military presence has shaped life on the island. Julie Noreen Barista moved to Guam from the Philippines when she was 12, after her family received citizenship. In high school, she remembers almost all of her peers taking the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, an aptitude test for enlistment eligibility. Recruiters often chatted to her about joining the Air Force. Because there aren't that many job opportunities on Guam, there's a high rate of enlistment in the military straight out of high school, Hattori said. Pretty much every family I know has at least one person in the military. It's just standard. It's the norm. The same is true for many of the territories. The military does not routinely publish enlistment numbers in the territories, but as of 2022, American Samoa had the highest rate of military enlistment of any state or territory, according to the Department of Health and Human Services. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Tip of the Spear. Sabrina Mahuka grew up in Pago Pago, the capital of American Samoa, on a mountain covered in lush greenery and naturally growing fruits and vegetables like avocados and mangoes. About half of her family has served in the military in some capacity, including her husband and 2 of her siblings. People joined, she said, to show their pride in being American. We know what it means to be loyal to our sovereign nation, and our commitment to the U.S. is taken very seriously, Salihu Mahuka said. Any global conflicts that happen, it might be done thousands of miles away, but for us, it's not an abstract concept. It's personal because many of our loved ones are serving. None of the 5 territories have seen specific threats as a result of the war in Iran. Although they're far from the conflict, people living in the territory say they feel vulnerable because both in terms of security risks and economic impacts. During times like these, we are especially mindful that some of our service members, both active duty and reservists, may be called upon to answer the nation's call once again, American Samoa Governor Pali Nikolopula said in a March 4th statement. Like the mainland United States, gas prices in the Pacific territories rose more than $1 in some places, with residents of Guam paying close to $6 a gallon. Military bases on Guam and the Northern Marianas Islands increased their threat level after the initial attacks on February 28th. We're considered the tip of the spear for American military influence, said Galvin de Leon Guerrera, president of Northern Marianas College. He was referring to the comments Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth made during a trip to Guam last March, in which he told the troops that they were at the front of the formation of the military. During a time of war, de Leon Guerrero and others in the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, or CNMI, said it's hard not to feel like the territories are taken for granted. There's a reason why we are a U.S. territory. We're basically a bargaining chip to serve as a form of national security, said Victoria Simone Ballas, who works for the CNMI governor's office. The CNMI, she said, has petitioned Congress for years to pass legislation improving travel access to the territory. Most flights to Saipan, the capital of the Northern Marianas, from the mainland United States require a layover in Japan. The issue has gained some traction among members of the Senate Armed Services Committee, who have said it affects service members and contractors who resupply the military bases. But what has led people to question why the need for flights wasn't taken more seriously when it was just for the people of the CNMI, Simone Ballas said. We are very supportive of the relationship. I think people are still trying to understand how that is reciprocated. Divisions cloud conversations about sovereignty and statehood. Conversations about local relations with the United States can be contentious in the territories. It's one of those issues you avoid at parties because people are going to get into arguments, Satori from Guam joked. Most people USA Today spoke with said their neighbors widely viewed their association with the United States positively. They talked about the benefits of having a U.S. passport, access to federal funding, and opportunities to move throughout the country. People look at the U.S. as really our economic lifeline, Hattori said. There's the strong feeling locally that if the U.S. wasn't here, we would just starve to death. We would just be completely without resources. Those sentiments differ by generation, though, and come with caveats. Many people, Hattori said, resent the territory's lack of representation in Congress. Military decisions about the island, she said, are made without consent. Call for independence often comes from younger generations who believe the military installations endanger the island's residents. Meanwhile, the older generation, they feel like if the U.S. isn't here, then they could just get invaded any day, Hattori said. Similar generational divides exist in Puerto Rico, where conversations about whether the territory should seek statehood or independence have been ongoing for decades. In a non-binding 2020 referendum, Puerto Ricans voted in favor of statehood 52% to 47%. More recently, pop star Bad Bunny alluded to ideas of Puerto Rican independence and sovereignty during his Super Bowl halftime show, which garnered more than 4 billion views. Even with the spotlight, Mendez says the debate still feels futile. A lot of people want to be a state. A lot of people want to be independent, he said. We don't really get to decide. U.S.-Iran engaged in meme warfare, foes using social media to shape perceptions. As it continues into its second month, the Iran war has moved from the Middle East to social media platforms, where memes, pop-up culture clips, and video game visuals are influencing how the conflict is perceived. From SpongeBob SquarePants jokes to video game mashups, U.S. government accounts and pro-Iranian voices are trading viral posts that mock opponents, rally supporters, and shape public opinion. Psychologists said the trend, sometimes called memetic warfare, can make military action feel controlled, playful, or even heroic while softening its real-world consequences. The memes normalize a hyper-masculine, militarized response and encourage people to automatically accept policies that would look very different in a sober news briefing, media psychologist and director of Media Psychology Center, Pamela Rutledge, says in USA Today. The White House official social media pages frequently feature animated content, pop culture references, sports clips, and iconic American imagery, including bald eagles and the U.S. flag. The post ramped up the war's start, becoming more patriotic and pointed. Some posts use familiar songs like Lynyrd Skynyrd's Free Bird with dramatic beat drops timed to clips of explosions. Others adapt popular video games, including remakes of Nintendo's Wii Sports, where scenes like a golf swing or an arrow shot end with footage of explosions. Some of those posts have earned hundreds of thousands of views and likes, with many accompanied by captions about continuing objectives or American strength. While Iran's central government accounts have not posted memes, some Iranian embassies and pro-Iranian social media accounts have responded with their own content criticizing the U.S. government. Posts from the Iranian embassies in Lebanon, Afghanistan, and South Africa include cartoons depicting President Donald Trump lighting himself on fire or standing beside a damaged Air Force One. Pro-Iranian accounts have also created memes that counter U.S. messages. One X account has drawn attention for animated AI-generated videos depicting Trump as a Lego-style character appearing stressed or screaming as Iran attacks U.S. boats. For the United States, the videos help create narratives that paint the war as controlled and winnable while making it look like play, media psychologist Centers Rutledge said. By flooding feeds with sizzle reels of gaming clips, superhero memes, and dominance jokes, these campaigns prime people, especially young men, to see war through a lens of inevitable, even desirable heroic excitement, Rutledge said. That makes policy feel right without anyone ever seeing the boots on the ground reality. Why war memes work. familiar characters soften the impact. While there is a physical battle underway, Rutledge said the memes also signal a battle of perception online by shaping who is cast as a hero and who is framed as an enemy. A good meme triggers emotion, humor, outrage, moral judgment, or group affiliation, Rutledge said. Humor lowers defenses, suspends critical analysis, and enhances social bonding. Heroic and dominance cues make the message feel morally right. That's a powerful mix if you're trying to sell a war to an anxious, overloaded audience. The White House posts rely on what Rutledge calls cultural containers, or shared references audiences already understand and feel connected to, including SpongeBob SquarePants, Wii Sports, Pixar films, Call of Duty, and Marvel characters. Linking familiar symbols to war imagery can overpower new information, Rutledge said, sanitizing the message with nostalgia while trivializing violence and human life. While humor has long been used to critique and cope with crises, the impact changes when the messaging comes from a government, said Irene Furchow, an associate professor at Florida State University. If people are naturally coming to these memes, it's telling you something about the nature of society, right? It's telling you something about the way people are feeling about it, Furchow told USA Today. When it's coming from the government, though, you don't get the aspect of kind of societal commentary because it's coming from people in power. Beyond that, presenting war updates in a joking, meme-driven format can minimalize the perceived horror of military action and make it more acceptable to viewers, she adds. The idea is to craft a certain message and a certain feeling. We don't want people to think this is a very serious issue where people are dying and it's unjust, Furchow said. We don't want people to think that if we want to go over there and fight, it's thoughtful and it's intentional. Battle brews over ballots in California. Seizure by gubernatorial candidate looms large. A legal battle is playing out in California between Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco and Democrats who say the Republican gubernatorial candidate's seizure of more than 650,000 ballots is a political stunt that undermines public trust in voting. Bianco, a staunch supporter of President Donald Trump, denies that. He says he's just doing his job in investigating allegations brought by a conservative citizen group in Riverside County in a special election in California in November 2025. Voting rights experts across the political spectrum say the case could have nationwide implications as other Trump supporters and conservative activists push similar and largely unfounded accusations of electoral irregularities in an effort to get law enforcement to investigate them. In an exclusive March 31st interview with USA Today, Bianco said the publicity surrounding his investigation has prompted elections and law enforcement officials and conservative groups to contact his office to see how they can launch similar inquiries. There are a lot of people reaching out to us from other states, from other counties than Riverside, saying the same thing is happening there, Bianco said. We have former poll workers saying that there is massive fraud going on, but nobody is looking into it. Hans Van Subkowski, a former Department of Justice official who is now an elections expert with the organization Advancing American Freedom, which advocates for conservative policies, supported Bianco's efforts to investigate the claims of ballot differential. Anytime there is a discrepancy in ballot totals, it should be investigated to find out whether there are any mistakes, errors, or intentional misconduct in the election, Van Sapowski told USA Today. In fact, election officials themselves should be conducting a comprehensive election audit, he said. Their failure to do so, resulting in the sheriff having to step in, is evidence of their incompetence or unwillingness to investigate potential wrongdoing. But Pamela Smith, who heads the voting rights group Verified Voting, said Bianco's 2 separate seizures of hundreds of boxes of ballots in March seem more like an intention grab than an effort to actually determine whether there was any kind of miscount. This is somebody who's running for office in California, and probably more people know his name today than they did a few weeks ago, Smith told the USA Today. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Recourse via normal channels. Voters passed Proposition 50, a ballot measure to redraw congressional districts in Democrats' favor 64 to 36 in the election in question. In Riverside County, it was 57 to 43. The state certified the election, and no one questioned its outcome until January. That's when Bianco said he was contacted by a conservative activist group called the Riverside Election Integrity Team that had done its own audit of the vote. County records showed the registrar of voters initially logged in the receipt of 611,000 mail ballots, according to Bianco, citing the group's audit. But when you add up the yes and the no, it comes up to 6,057 ballots, Bianco said. That adds up to 46,000 vote difference in the number of ballots compared to the number of votes reported. There's no explanation for why it's different, Bianco said, so we started looking into it. Bianco's allegations have been disputed by county election officials who say the real discrepancy was only 103 ballots. They said such claims were based on a misinterpretation of unofficial versus certified ballot totals. Smith said Bianco is comparing apples to oranges. The lower number comes from preliminary ballot intake logs that are unofficial and incomplete, she said, and don't take into consideration things like late arriving ballots, provisional ballots, and cured ballots with questionably matching signatures issues resolved. The higher number, according to Smith, includes all of those in one complete, verified, and officially certified vote total. There are a variety of reasons why they come in later. That wouldn't be included in the initial count, Smith said. If you collaborate with the county, they can walk you through all that. Even if such a discrepancy existed, Smith said, the United States, and especially California, have multi-layered systems in place for checking election results that Bianco could have used to verify the results. That includes post-election audits, ballot accounting and reconciliation procedures, and recounts that focus on one specific precinct, or the whole state, she said. So if they say they had questions about a particular set of numbers, they could have had an election official to do a recount, Smith said. There's recourse through normal channels. Instead, Bianco got Riverside County Superior Court Judge Jay Keel to sign a series of warrants beginning in mid-February authorizing the sheriff to seize the ballots tied to the November election. His department initially seized about 1,000 boxes of ballot materials, including 650,000 ballots from the Riverside County Registrar of Voters, and later seized another bunch after California Attorney General Rob Bonta, a Democrat, told him to cease and desist. The court also ordered the appointment of a special master to oversee a ballot count, Bianco said. Bonta, the Attorney General, has disputed that, saying the warrant didn't appoint a special master to conduct such a recount. On to the money section. 50 states. Alabama, Gadsden. The city of Gadsden on April 2nd marked the start of a new expansion at the Gadsden Sports Park, breaking ground on a phase 5 of the Riverfront Complex. Alaska, Anchorage. University of Alaska staff voted to form a union called Coalition of Alaska University Employees for Equity, which will organize as part of the National United Auto Workers, KTOO reported. Arizona, Phoenix. An energy task force convened by Governor Katie Hobbs has outlined plans to expedite new projects to meet demand from data centers and Arizona's semiconductor boom, while keeping the costs of doing so from driving up Arizonans' utility bills. Arkansas, Little Rock. A recent federal court ruling blocking an executive order to defund public broadcasting is not expected to alter Arkansas's plan to sever ties with PBS, according to the head of the state's public television network. California, San Francisco. President Donald Trump wants to reopen Alcatraz Island as a modern federal prison, and he is asking Congress for $152 million to start planning the project, according to a proposed 2027 budget request. The proposal, buried in the Department of Justice's budget submission released by the White House, calls for converting the former maximum security prison into a state-of-the-art federal facility. Colorado, Denver. Colorado has marked its third consecutive year of declining auto thefts, with a 34% reduction in 2025 compared to 2024, according to the 2025 Colorado Auto Theft Prevention Authority report from the Colorado State Patrol. This decline represents an overall 56% reduction in auto thefts since 2021. Connecticut, New Haven. State scientists issue a warning that tick activity is on the rise, WFSB reported. Delaware, Delaware City. A Delaware mother is suing Delaware City Refinery over pollution she believes impacted her child's health and their ability to enjoy their home. District of Columbia, Washington. Police said multiple arrests were made after several fights erupted outside the Teen Spring Jam event at the King Greenleaf Recreation Center on April 4th, WUSA reported. Florida, Brevard County. The Department of War has confirmed that the secretive March 26 launch at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station was a successful hypersonic missile test. The missile test had not been publicly announced, but it was foreshadowed by a rarely seen Coast Guard Department of Homeland Security launch hazard zone for mariners that stretched over a narrow section of the Atlantic Ocean. Georgia, Savannah. The Savannah Police Department has unveiled its newly renovated headquarters in the National Historic Landmark District. The 156-year-old building is thought to be one of the oldest continually operating police headquarters buildings in America, Savannah City Manager Jay Melder said. Renovations spanned 3 years and cost the city approximately $13.5 million, Savannah Mayor Van Johnson said, about $5.7 million over the original budget approved by the City Council in December of 2022. Hawaii, Honolulu. A University of Hawaii study found that farmers in the state face high suicide rates driven by constant uncertainty and repeated weather-related disasters, Hawaii News Now reported. Idaho, Cascade. The Valley County Sheriff's Office said an investigation is underway after thieves stole more than $5,000 in quarters from the Cascade Laundromat, KTVB7 reported. Illinois, Springfield. A Chicago man who opened fire on an Illinois state police trooper in Springfield in 2023 was sentenced to 95 years in the Illinois State of Corrections at a 90-minute hearing in Sangamon County Court on April 3rd. Indiana, Indianapolis. A country music legends reading initiative has made its way to every Indiana county after fundraising efforts to maintain it. Dolly Parton's Imagination Library is now available in all 92 Indiana counties after a public fundraising drive to keep the program alive in the state, Indiana's First Lady Maureen Brand announced. Iowa, Ames. Iowa State University recently announced Oakview Group will manage and book live events at the various campus venues as well as at the still-in-progress Sci-Town Entertainment District. Kansas, Salina. Salina Regional Health Center's laboratory has earned re-accreditation from the Accreditation Commission for Healthcare, according to a community announcement. Kentucky, Frankfort. Kentucky did not always comply with federal requirements in its use of grant funding for cleanup of former coal mining sites, and in some cases failed to appropriately report or track grant funds, according to a federal audit released in March. Louisiana, Baton Rouge. The Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Commission announced the 2026 private recreational and state charter red snapper season will open May 1st in both state and federal waters. Maine, Piscataquis County. I'm sorry. It's a hard one. The Maine Department of Transportation said work has begun on a $23.7 million pavement preservation and improvement project in the county, News Center Maine reported. Maryland, Hagerstown. St. Mary's Catholic School in Hagerstown has gained national recognition for its commitment to Catholic education. The school has been included in the Newman Guide, which is compiled annually by the Cardinal Newman Society and recommends K-12 schools across the nation for their strong Catholic identity, according to a community announcement. St. Mary's is the first school in the Archdiocese of Baltimore to be included in the guide and one of the only 38 schools nationally to be recognized this year. Massachusetts, Worcester. Aiming to prepare professionals to meet the high demand in mental health care, Clark University is launching a graduate degree program in mental health counseling. Michigan, Lansing. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is closing all 4 of its Forest Service research and development facilities in Michigan as part of a massive restructuring effort, the federal agency announced. Minnesota, St. Paul. Around 85% of Minnesota students who entered high school in the fall of 2021 graduated within 4 years, according to the data from the Minnesota Department of Education. It's a slight increase from the 84.2% graduation rate the year before, following the trend over the past several years of rates staying about the same or increasing slightly, Minnesota Reformer reported. Mississippi, Madison. While ground has already officially been broken on the Arts and Entertainment District known as the Gallery in Madison, actual development construction is expected to get started in the near future. Bellemere Development Services Vice President Anna Jane Stanley said she didn't want to overpromise, but she expects the project to go vertical by early summer. Missouri, Jefferson City. 4 state entities are warning the public about the growing presence of a highly potent synthetic opioid found in the state. Nitazene has been increasingly involved in Missouri overdose deaths in 2024, said the Missouri Department of Public Safety, Health, and Senior Services, Elementary and Secondary Education, and Mental Health. More recently, the drug has been found in wastewater at schools in the state. Montana, Bozeman. Gallatin College has received a $50,000 grant to teach high school students the importance of cybersecurity, KBZK reported. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 45 minutes past the hour. Nebraska, Lincoln. The 2026 Nebraska statewide groundwater level monitoring report released by the Conservation and Survey Division in the University of Nebraska-Lincoln School of Natural Resources found that groundwater levels continued to decline in 2025, dropping an average of 0.29 feet, though the decline generally did not threaten drinking water or irrigation supplies, Nebraska Today reported. That is a run-on sentence, my goodness. Nevada, Carson City. A man is accused of shooting at traffic cameras and sparking fires, then leading deputies on a chase that ended in a crash April 4th in Carson City, authorities said. New Hampshire, Dover. Hyder Family Hospice House will close within a few weeks, Stratford County officials announced, stating the decision reflects Dyer County finances. New Jersey, Trenton. New Jersey gambling regulators cannot prevent prediction market firms like Kashi from accepting wagers on sports, a federal appeals court ruled, saying that the decision is vested in the federal government. New Mexico, Carlsbad. The U.S. Geology Survey said a magnitude 4.3 earthquake was reported near Carlsbad on April 6th, KRQE reported. New York, Mount Vernon. An unlicensed funeral director has been indicted on 20 charges related to illegally providing funeral directing services for at least 8 months, the New York State Attorney General's office announced. Michael Naughton is accused of operating as an unlicensed funeral director and defrauding New Yorkers out of thousands of dollars between May 2025 and January 2026, after a State Department of Health inspection of Camelot Funeral Home discovered 13 bodies in various states of decomposition and 17 boxes of cremated remains in January. North Carolina, Hendersonville. The contractor on a major downtown Hendersonville residential construction project is suing the owner to enforce a lien, claiming the company is owed millions for work done over the past 2 years. North Dakota, Fargo. City Commissioner Michelle Turnberg has announced that she is running for Fargo mayor, KVRR reported. Ohio, Massillon. Facing chronic staff shortages, the state is pausing admissions to the Indian River Juvenile Correctional Facility, one of 3 youth prisons. Oklahoma City. The U.S. Supreme Court has rejected calls to hear a pivotal tribal sovereignty case from Oklahoma that could have decided whether some tribal citizens are exempt from paying income tax to the state. The court's decision not to hear Alicia Strobel's lawsuit against the Oklahoma Tax Commission effectively sends the question back to the state of Oklahoma, which has already ruled against her. Oregon, Salem. Staff at Oregon State Parks failed to complete safety inspections of park buildings and kept inconsistent records of state property, according to an audit released by the Oregon Secretary of State. The problems, auditors found, could risk visitor safety and taxpayer money due to lawsuits and fines if not addressed. Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. U.S. Senator John Fetterman has sent a letter to the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, requesting a heightened federal security designation ahead of the National Football League draft in Pittsburgh. Rhode Island, Newport. Following an outpouring of support, Newport Hospital's birthing center will remain open. However, that will require $4.9 million in annual revenue that will need to come from increased state funding and philanthropic support, according to a press release from Brown University Health. South Carolina, Greenville. A beloved baby box turtle is missing from the Contesty Nature Preserve. Staff members are pleading with whoever took her to bring her back. South Dakota, Pierre. The officials who manage South Dakota's public employee retirement system said that if current investment trends continue, retirees are likely to see a July 2027 cost of living benefit adjustment similar to the 1.56% increase they will get this July, South Dakota's Searchlight reported. If inflation stays above 2% as it has lately, that could mean a 6th straight year of increases less than inflation, according to the news outlet. Texas, Austin. The Texas Department of Public Safety announced an increase in patrols to head off distracted driving. The Distracted Driving Traffic Enforcement Campaign runs through April 13th statewide. Utah, St. George. Beloved California-based beloved California-based burger chain In-N-Out will be opening a restaurant in St. George soon, according to the company's website. Vermont, Burlington. A migrant justice leader accused of smuggling people into the U.S. was released on bond April 2nd, as a judge rejected federal prosecutors' argument that he was a flight risk and should be held without bail. Virginia, Petersburg. A new festival brings together music, art, food, and community on one stage. Sankofa Diaspora Fest, a family-friendly celebration of African, African-American, Afro-Caribbean, and Afro-Latino cultures, will be held on April 18th. Washington, Westport. The Cascadia Research Collective said a juvenile gray whale was seen multiple times in the Wilpa River in Pacific County over the past several days has died, King 5 reported. Oh, that's sad. West Virginia, Charleston. Governor Patrick Morrisey has appointed Nathan Tessman as a new executive director of the West Virginia Housing Development Fund, WVVA reported. Wisconsin, Madison. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources will now have the authority to launch grant programs, hire staff, and help communities remediate forever chemical contamination after years of disagreements between lawmakers and the governor of how a trust fund could be spent. Governor Tony Evers on April 6th signed into law 2 bills that release millions of dollars to address the growing number of PFAS contaminations found across the state. Evers previously vetoed similar legislation but negotiated with Republicans to create a compromise. Wyoming, Guernsey. Bridger Pipeline's proposed project to transport Canadian crude from the U.S. to U.S.-Canada border to Wyoming would cost about $2 billion and have a capacity to transport more than 1 billion barrels of oil per day, according to new details released by the company. And that is all of our state news right now. Push to dish tax grows amid Iran war. Momentum appears to be building for a push to suspend or eliminate the 18-cent per gallon federal gas tax to help drivers suffering from high prices at the pump due to the Iran war. The largest lobbying group for car makers in Washington, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, came out in favor of the plan to eliminate the federal gas tax in favor of a new vehicle fee that would be based on the weight of the cars. Depending on how long this current global oil shock lasts, I do expect to see a consumer shift toward more fuel-efficient vehicles, John Bensala, president of the Alliance, which lobbies for most major automakers such as Ford, General Motors, Stellantis, Honda, and Toyota, wrote in a blog post. That's likely to accelerate the insolvency of the Highway Trust Fund, the governor's dedicated account to build, fix, and maintain, the government's dedicated account to build, fix, and maintain America's transportation infrastructure. The comments follow similar statements from President Donald Trump and some U.S. lawmakers that have floated the idea of suspending the federal gas tax to help drivers who are now feeling the pinch at the pump. They also come as the national average gas price rose to $4.09 per gallon on April 3rd, according to the AAA Auto Club. That figure is up from the national price of $3.10 1 month ago on March 3rd. The gas tax, people have talked about it, Trump said when he was asked recently if he is considering the idea of suspending the gas tax collected by the federal government since the 1930s. It's something we have in our pocket if we think it's necessary. A pair of Democratic lawmakers in the U.S. Senate also introduced legislation on March 13th that call for the suspension of the federal gas tax until October 1st in light of the nation's escalating gas prices. The USA Today Cars team took a look at what it takes to suspend or eliminate the federal gas tax and how likely this is going to come to fruition. How much gas tax does the federal government collect? The federal government has been collecting taxes on every gas purchase made at a U.S. station since the 1930s. The current rate of 18.4 cents per gallon was established by a law that was passed by Congress in 1993. Transportation funding advocates have lamented the fact that Congress has not moved to increase the gas tax in the more than 3 decades. The gas tax typically is authorized by Congress each time it adopts a federal highway funding bill because the revenue it generates is used to fund the U.S. Department of Transportation's Highway Trust Fund, which is distributed to states to help pay for road and transit construction projects. The federal gas tax was first established in 1932 at a rate of 1 cent per gallon. It had been increased multiple times since then by Congress, and some lawmakers have called to tie it to the inflation, as votes to increase taxes have become politically difficult for lawmakers to stomach because of voters. Most states also tack on their own gas taxes to fund local road projects. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the USA Today for Wednesday, April 8th, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Mary Gilmore. Have a wonderful day.
You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. As of this year, our agency has broadcast more than 300,000 hours of radio readings. Volunteer radio readers read newspapers, magazines, and books to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading broadcasts from studios at 1199 Harlem Road in suburban Buffalo. Please let others know about Radio Reading. It's your service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of the USA Today. Your reader for this hour is Nancy. Mighty Michigan. Wolverines snare NCAA title on strength of defense, not offense. You wouldn't think Michigan would be all smiles at halftime. Yes, it had a 4-point lead over UConn in the national championship game, but it was an unattractive 4-point lead. It was arguably the worst first-half performance of the season. Not only did the Wolverines fail to make a single three-pointer in the first half, the only time that's happened this season, but there were no makes outside of the paint. An awful first 20 minutes. But the Wolverines weren't just staying positive, they were beaming in happiness. Why? It can't get any worse, Michigan guard Nimari Bennett told USA Today Sports. True, but it's not like the second half was any better. Michigan struggled offensively for all 40 minutes. The 69 points were Michigan's third lowest of the season. It was its worst three-point shooting night of the season. Actually, it was the worst shooting performance of the season, period. UConn needed to make Michigan look ugly to win. It did that, and the Huskies still lost. So how did the Wolverines do it? Because one thing hiding in plain sight. While Michigan was lighting up the scoreboard with its prolific offense all tournament long, it made everyone forget one thing. The Wolverines are just as good on defense. When one side lets us down, the other side picks us up, Michigan forward Yaxel Lendeborg said. The Wolverines made sure to remind everybody, resulting in a national championship, as those halftime smiles carried over to after the buzzer sounded and the Lucas Oil Stadium rained maize and blue confetti. It's not like Michigan's defense prowess wasn't all there for all to see. 3 players, Lendeborg, Morris Johnson Jr., and Ade Mara, were Big Ten All-Defensive players, with Mara the Conference Defensive Player of the Year. That's why the Wolverines' defensive shooting percentage of 38.4%, an average of 6.1 blocks per game, were each the second best mark in the country. It was on full display in the NCAA tournament. The reason why Michigan won its first 5 tournament games by an average of 21.6 points per game wasn't just because it was scoring at least 90 points, but because it harassed opposing offenses every night. No team shot above 45% against the Wolverines, and the collective opponent shooting percentage from those games, a whopping 37.9%. The defense got better in the tournament. The statistics, it speaks for itself, Bennett said. I feel like we're the best defensive team in the country. Bennett and company did prove it. UConn shot a season worst 31% from the field. A team that was top 10 in assists with more than 18 per game had just 9, the only time it was held to single digits. Despite making 9 three-pointers, UConn missed 24 attempts. Shots were constantly getting contested by the Wolverines' quickness to the ball. Even with the looks UConn wanted, not many of them were wide open. It didn't get any easier near the basket. 6 shots inside the paint got swatted away, making it tough for the Huskies to prevail, even with their own defensive toughness. It's hard to have a level of disappointment where literally it just came down to we just didn't make it enough shots in the basket, UConn coach Dan Hurley said. To be able to keep that team under 40% from the field, 38%, this team had destroyed everyone they faced in this tournament. For all of its defensive success, Michigan still had to find a way to score, and it did so in an uncharacteristic way. If there was one thing Michigan wasn't good at, it was free throws. The Wolverines entered the night 109th in the country, with 74.3% mark from the charity stripe. They drew fouls, resulting in 28 free throw attempts. How many makes? How about 25 for an 89.3% clip? All of it proving to be just enough to get the biggest win of the season. We started off really, really bad offensively. Our defense was the reason why we won most of those games. Today is the same thing, Lendy Borg said. We had to dig deep. While it wasn't pretty by any means, how Michigan won showed there is nothing to doubt about this title. Since the statement it made at the Players' Era tournament, Michigan had been a relentless machine on both sides of the ball, churning blowout after blowout, no matter who was on the other side. Even when it isn't able to do that, instead of falling apart like most teams could, the Wolverines opted to hone in on one of its many strengths and ride it toward a win. They're legit. They definitely deserve to win the national championship. They're clearly the best team in the country this year, Hurley said. UConn wanted a slugfest, and it's exactly what it got. Michigan coach Dusty May actually admitted the Huskies had a masterful game plan to beat us. All of it pointed to a third national title in 4 years to cement Hurley's dynasty. Little did UConn and the rest of the country realize Michigan had been throwing it down all season, and it did not need another offensive surge to do that. The defense carried Michigan just as much to this point in the season, and in the end, it proved defense wins championships. All hail the Big Ten, conference dominating college sports landscape. Zip it. SEC, ACC, Big East, Big 12. It's not about you either. It's the Big Ten world right now. Everyone else is just living in it. Michigan gave the conference its first men's basketball title in 26 years on April 6th, a day after UCLA won the Big Ten's first women's championship in 27 years. And both come less than 3 months after Indiana won the college football playoff. It's the first time since 2007 that one conference has won all 3 titles. Coming off a national championship in football, UCLA winning their first, and then us winning today. I think it's huge for the Big Ten and for everyone in the Big Ten, Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel said, after the Wolverines completed one of the most dominant runs in men's NCAA tournament history with a 69-63 win over UConn. We're here and we won because of what the Big Ten brings in basketball, Manuel added, and I think UCLA can say the same. It's not just basketball and football. Big Ten teams have also won national championships this school year in men's soccer, men's wrestling, men's water polo, women's hockey, women's field hockey. And the year isn't over. The men's Frozen Four starts April 9th, and Michigan and Wisconsin are in it. UCLA is currently ranked number 1 in baseball. We expect to win national championships, Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti said. That's what we compete for. The SEC likes to claim bragging rights in college sports. It just means more in the conference tagline, the implication being that college athletics revolves around the SEC, in football and basketball especially. But the SEC is going through a bit of a drought lately. This was the 3rd consecutive season the SEC didn't win the national title in football, which is basically an eternity. Florida's title in men's basketball last season snapped a 13-year drought. South Carolina was routed in the last 2 women's title games. Into the void has stepped the Big Ten. When I first got to the league 3 years ago, they talked about it. We wanted to compete in everything, Petitti said. The Big Ten, said Petitti, takes plenty of grief for throwing their weight around. They might not have quite the superior complex as the SEC and its commissioner, Greg Sankey, but it's close. They want the CFP and the basketball tournaments expanded so more of their teams can get in. They blew up traditional rivalries so they could supersize their conference's footprints. They want Congress to shut off the name, image, and likeness, NIL, spigot, because they couldn't be bothered to. Say this, though, so long as there are titles to be won, the Big Ten is going to do everything it can to win as many of them as they can. That means paying for facilities, paying for coaches, and yes, in this day and age, paying for players. Our job at the league office is to provide the resources and the support that our teams need to be able to compete on this level, Petitti said, and then turn it over to the great coaches and student athletes, all the great ADs and presidents. There's another element to it, too. Few conferences are as unforgiving to their fellow members as the Big Ten. Conference seasons often resemble the Hunger Games, for as much as Big Ten teams beat each other to a pulp. Just look back to the Big Ten men's tournament. 3 of the top seeds, Illinois, Nebraska, and Michigan State, were sent packing without a single win. Michigan looked more primed for an early exit than the national title. It was so rough, some idiot even said there was no way a Big Ten team would win the men's championship. But you don't get steel without a whole lot of heat, and the conference meat grinder has served to turn Big Ten teams into behemoths come the postseason. The Big Ten put 5 teams in the men's Elite 8 and 2 in the women's. Now it has both basketball titles. We play in a great league, Petitti said. No matter what the sport is, when you're in the Big Ten, you're competing in a great league, and they have the trophies and the titles to prove it. Justin Rose, oh so close for Masters fitting. Justin Rose is well aware of what it takes to be successful at Augusta National. He's also well aware about whether he sits in the history of the Masters tournament. The story here cannot be told without mentioning him, but none of those chapters end with him wearing a green jacket. The 45-year-old is just a handful of shots away from 3 separate Masters victories. He finished runner-up to Jordan Spieth in 2015 and fell short in playoffs to Sergio Garcia in 2017 and Rory McIlroy in 2025, coming ever so close to golf immortality. Despite all that, he isn't harping on the near misses. I think for me, I'm very aware that I've been close here. I'm very aware that I've had tough losses here, Rose said during his pre-tournament interview on April 6th. I also am aware that I enjoy this place, so I don't want to feel that those 3 second place finishes needed to create a different sort of feeling for me. This isn't about reinventing himself or making groundbreaking changes to his game. It's about getting the last 5 or 10% out of his game over 72 holes. I feel like I've pretty much done what it takes to win, he said. I just haven't kind of walked over the line. I feel like I've executed well enough to have done the job. From that point of view, I don't feel like I have to find something in myself to kind of do something different. I truly believe that. Rose will make his 21st Masters start this week. How has this preparation changed over 2 decades? He says it's about realizing the week is a marathon, not a sprint. Definitely what I've learned through the years is that you, There was a tendency early in my career to try to be perfect for Thursday. Yeah, you need to be ready for Thursday, but you kind of need to save your gas for Sunday as well, he said. If you start great, you still need to finish strong. Be able to finish it off. Yeah, saving, kind of having the long view term of what it takes to be in contention and finish it off, the weekend does definitely. I'll probably do less now than I would have done 10 years, 15 years ago for sure. Rose added, despite his vast experience at Augusta, it still comes down to execution. Listen, you can know everything in the world, but when it comes to execution, if you're not playing well, it doesn't matter how well you know anything, he said. It's an execution-based business, and the golf course doesn't know what I know. Basically, I've got to put a swing on a ball or make a good read in the moment or put it on the right speed and do all the things you have to do week in and week out to play well. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 18 minutes after the hour. Couples could tell Tiger things can get better. Freddie Couples is a longtime friend of Tiger Woods. The two former master champions very often would partner for practice rounds the week of the season's first major. Couples accepts he probably won't see Woods for a few months, but he believes Wood is where he needs to be to receive help after saying he is seeking treatment and prioritizing his well-being. If he's in Switzerland, he must be at a spot that's going to help him, and that's the key thing. Couples, 66, said after playing a practice round ahead of the Masters on April 6th with Vijay Singh and Jake Knapp. It's a very interesting subject for me, Couples said about his relationship with Woods. People always ask me about Tiger. When I text him, I always ask about his kids and how he's feeling. I don't ask him about his golf game. I don't ask him about Sunday Red. I don't ask him about anything. He always replies, and I think he likes that. For me now, to get involved with this would not make much sense. Doesn't mean I'm not paying attention, but for me, we're completely different people. I have a lot of respect for him, and if I could spend a week with him, I might enjoy that more than he would, if that makes any sense, because being around him is a treat for me. Woods was arrested March 27th after a two-vehicle crash in Jupiter Island, Florida, and is facing charges for DUI with property damage and refusal to submit to a lawful test. He passed a breath test but refused to submit to a urinalysis. A search of Wood's pocket found 2 pills revealed to be hydrocodone, a strong opioid painkiller. The wreck was the second time since 2021 that Woods has been in a crash in which his vehicle rolled over, and the second time since 2017 he has been arrested for DUI charges. Couples was asked, what would he tell Woods if he could talk to him now? I would tell him I love him and things can always get better, he said. Again, how many surgeries? 10 or 12 surgery? I don't know any human being. I used to snap at everyone. Felt like someone was tapping me on the back all day long. After 8 to 10 hours, you just can't take it. It's like a toothache. This guy has had surgeries. I have a bad back. I've gotten through that since I was 32. But to have surgeries and not know the pain, I didn't know Bill Walton, but saw his 30 for 30, an ESPN documentary, and he wanted to commit suicide. Pain is a rough thing. Couples communicated with Woods before the accident, but he never asked about the Masters. Woods indicated several times he was hoping to play. What did Couples say to him? I did say, loved watching you play in the TGL, Couples said. That's it. I'm not going to say, oh, does that mean you're playing Augusta? That would mean bye-bye. I don't need to talk to you much anymore. This Masters amateur called FIFA by family. FIFA Leopacdi has perhaps the most interesting name of the 2026 Masters. The junior at Arizona State is one of 6 amateurs teeing it up this week at Augusta National. He earned his spot in the field thanks to his victory at the Asia Pacific Amateur, where he won on the 3rd playoff hole with the birdie. He's the first Thai amateur to play in the Masters as well. He goes by the nickname FIFA, but his birth name is Pongasak. He got his nickname from his parents, and Leo Pagdi told the hilarious story of how he got his nickname during his pre-tournament press conference at Augusta National Golf Club. My dad is a huge soccer fan, and he was choosing between FIFA from FIFA World Cup and UEFA from UEFA Champions League, Leo Pakide said April 6th. So luckily, I ended up with FIFA. It's the 2nd straight year an amateur from Arizona State has been in the Masters field. In 2025, Joselle Ballester made his debut as the defending U.S. amateur champion. In addition to Ballester, there have been plenty of former ASU players for Leo Pacdi to rely on for advice ahead of his first start at Augusta National. There's a lot of ASU alumni that have played this event, Leo Pacdi said. I'm lucky enough to talk to them and talk back in ASU like Giselle, and I played with John Rahm at the start of January. It's been an honor to have those kinds of guys in town and practice alongside you and give you any answers. They're happy enough to answer all my questions, all my concerns, and give me all the tips and other strategies to use this week. Perhaps FIFA can avoid red cards this week and hoist a trophy for low amateur come April 12th. Lindsey Vonn may return. I never got a final run. Despite a devastating crash at the 2026 Milan Cortina Winter Olympics that fractured her tibia and nearly forced doctors to amputate her leg, Lindsey Vonn is still contemplating a return to competitive skiing. I mean, much to my family's dismay, yes, the 41-year-old Vonn said in an April 7th interview on NBC's Today Show. I think it's just something that, I've been, like I said, so isolated and not able to really live life outside of skiing. Vonn was competing at the Winter Olympics just 9 days after she tore her ACL in the same left leg during a World Cup event. However, the crash came when she hooked a gate in the women's downhill and was unrelated to her knee injury. Vonn, a 3-time Olympic medalist, previously retired from skiing in 2019 due to injuries. But she returned to the sport in 2024 and was back in top form, leading the World Cup standings in the downhill heading into the Olympics. Vonn said she's currently undergoing extensive physical therapy, even though she isn't sure whether or not she'll ever ski again. I can move on, Vonn said. It's not a question of can I. I already have, and I already retired for 6 years. Like I know what it's like to not be a ski racer anymore. It's just that ski racing is something I love to do, and I had so much fun this season that I never got a final run. Despite her long list of career accomplishments, which include a record 82 World Cup race wins, 20 World Cup titles, 8 World Championship medals, and 3 Olympic medals, Vonn still admits being insecure about how she'll be remembered because of what happened on the slopes at Cortina. I don't want that to be my legacy at all, because I was having such an amazing season doing things that no one else has ever done. And I was so proud of that. I don't want that to be washed away. You know, I don't want 13 seconds to define my career because it's so much more than that. North Carolina took a gamble, but Malone might just pay off. There was always going to be something jarring about whoever North Carolina was going to hire as its next men's basketball coach. After firing Hubert Davis following the first round NCAA tournament flameout, it was widely expected that for the first time in 74 years, the tradition-rich, arguably insular Tar Heels were going to get a replacement with no previous experience at the school as a student, player, or assistant coach. Still, even with the assumption, the end of their search for Dave's successor managed to raise more than a few eyebrows. A storyline that loomed over the college basketball world for the last 2 weeks reached its conclusion on April 6, with North Carolina hiring longtime NBA coach Michael Malone to take over arguably the most prestigious and coveted job in the sport. The move didn't exactly come out of nowhere. Malone's daughter Bridget is a sophomore on the Tar Heels volleyball team, and because of that, Malone has spent his share of time around Chapel Hill, all of which linked him to the job from virtually the moment it came open. There's plenty of reasons to like the decision, too. He led the Denver Nuggets to the NBA playoffs 6 times over his 10-year tenure, highlighted by a championship in 2023. He oversaw Nikola Jokic's development into a 3-time NBA MVP. He was widely regarded as a sharp tactical mind who knew how to coach defense and push the right buttons at the right time. In his 10 years with the Nuggets and Sacramento Kings, Malone built strong relationships with players, even with the famously mercurial DeMarcus Cousins. Though his intensity reportedly wore on his Nuggets players over time, leading to his surprising ouster last April, with 3 games still remaining in the regular season. It came after a decade in Denver and after plenty of wins. It wasn't a reflection of his abilities as a coach. It was simply time for a new voice. For as lengthy as his resume is, Malone's hiring presents a tremendous risk for North Carolina, which accounts for at least some of the astonishment around the freshly forged marriage. Malone hasn't coached at the college level since he was an assistant coach at Manhattan in 2001. After a quarter of century in the NBA, how will he adjust to coaching and trying to reach college kids? Though college basketball is becoming increasingly professionalized, he's stepping into a sport that's rapidly changing from the influence of name, image, and likeness, the NIL, to navigate the transfer portal and international recruiting. Together, those challenges have befuddled and even overwhelmed some of the game's most accomplished coaches, all of whom have significantly more experience with college game's various quirks and nuances than Malone. Even if he wins big in Chapel Hill, what's stopping him from going back to the NBA, where he would have been one of the most sought-after coaches during this year's hiring cycle? Numerous blind spots. From there, he'll tend to build out a roster that will dictate the initial direction of his tenure. While the comparisons and jokes are easy to make, this isn't quite the same as the Tar Heels hiring Bill Belichick, another championship-winning professional coach, to lead their football program. At 54, Malone is 19 years younger than Belichick, putting him in his coaching prime rather than in the twilight of his career. Unlike Belichick, whose New England Patriots dynasty crumbled shortly after Tom Brady left, Malone was still winning at a high level at the end of his time with the Nuggets, with a 157-88 record in his final 3 seasons. Malone doesn't arrive on Tobacco Road with an army of lackeys to fill out his most important staff positions, or a significant other who spends her days stepping on public relations rakes. If this pairing fails, it will be hard to separate from Belichick, with North Carolina leadership thinking a big name with a fat championship ring on his hand can translate to a completely different sport. If it pays off, and given Malone's famously furious work ethic, this is probably the more likely possibility. The Tar Heels will once again become one of the most feared forces in the country, an annual threat to win the ACC, make the Final Four, and accomplish the kinds of things Davis largely failed to during his inconsistent 5-year run at his alma mater. In a sometimes meandering search, North Carolina didn't get Tommy Lloyd or Dusty May, the types of proven winners at the Power Four conference level, who would have been guaranteed success stories in Chapel Hill. But even with all the questions Malone will have to answer, the Tar Heels may have gotten the next best thing. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 36 minutes after the hour. This is the Life section. Straub's fantasy embraces fandom. Author's love for boy bands is ageless. As a kid, novelist Emma Straub loved New Kids on the Block. In her mid-40s, that lingering fandom led her to a boy band nostalgia cruise and befriending Joey McIntyre. For research purposes, of course. Aboard the New Kids on the Block cruise in 2023, the All Adults Here author mingled, partied, and sang with 3,000 blockheads there to see Jonathan, Jordan, Joey, Donnie, and Danny in real life. This act of embracing the inner fangirl at any age is the basis of her 7th book, American Fantasy, out now from Riverhead Books. In it, 50-year-old Annie embarks on a 90s-era boy band cruise alone after her sister backs out. Newly divorced and an empty nester, it's in the company of feverish fangirls that she's able to reawaken a long-buried part of herself. We don't often take teenage girls or their interests seriously, whether it's bands, celebrities, or media. See the campy masterpiece Twilight. Polite society sneers at screaming fans of any age or gender. They're rabid, hysterical, obsessed. But they also get the job done. Who else could build a lucrative careers as professional fan content creators on social media? Or run general admission lines like the Navy, so respected that even the venues honor the fan-made system? People do not respect teenage girls. They really don't, but I do. I do, and I will until I die, Straub tells USA Today, sitting for an interview at Books Are Magic, the Brooklyn bookstore she owns. Teenage girls are brilliant and passionate and hilarious, and they know what's good. Straub's last novel, This Time Tomorrow, took a fictional time travel lens at grief following the death of her father. The novelist and Stephen King collaborated Peter Straub. She said she cried non-stop while she wrote it. When she came up for air, she craved a different kind of catharsis. American Fantasy, by contrast, is dripping with joy. It's so darn fun to read that you can just envision Straub smiling as she typed every word. It's told in 3 perspectives. Floundering, newly single Annie, Keith, the lead singer and branded nice guy of the fictional group Boy Talk, and Sarah, a no-nonsense cruise producer responsible for wrangling the talent, fans, and an incompetent assistant. In this world that we all live in together right now, we are all sorely missing joy, Straub said. Had it not been for this time tomorrow, I don't know if I would have given myself permission to write this book because, on the face of it, it seems like some people think it's silly and it's funny. There's so much humor in this book, but also to me, it's as serious as a heart attack. I'm not making fun of any of these people, not the fans, not the band, not the crews. I'm in just such full support of the complicated fullness of all of them. Like her main character, Straub embarked on the cruise alone. If the No Kids on the Block cruise is anything like the American Fantasy, it's filled with themed costumes and prom-like dances, intimate shows, and lots of selfies. A 2018 Boston Globe article confirms the women begin to cluster around Joey as if they are one big cell and he is the nucleus. When they were 12 or whatever they were, teeny bopper fans, but now they are full adult women who are in charge of everything. They're in charge of their children. They're in charge of their aging parents. They're in charge of their jobs, and they're making dinner, Straub says. What I loved was seeing all of these women use every inch of that brain power for themselves. For themselves, for their own pleasure and happiness. These women had such elaborate costumes. They worked out everything. I would trust these women to plan anything. In American Fantasy, Annie leaves dry land insecure and unsure of herself, open to change but not quite sure how to pivot. Surrounded by superfans and cruise regulars, Annie is reminded of a college roommate who made fun of her for liking boy talk. She felt childish. For the author, fandom is a way of life. Writing books and owning books are magic means she stepped in the literary world from all angles. I get to be a fan, and being a fan doesn't diminish me, she says. The more you love anything, the bigger it makes you. She's confident that the idea of cringe is evaporating with younger generations. She wants fans of all ages to relish in what brings them joy. She references the Mary Oliver poem, Wild Geese, which reads, "You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves." Keith Fiore, the voice of Boy Talk, is going through a crisis of his own. Also middle-aged with a teen daughter and a crumbling marriage, he goes to therapy to work through the business of being Keith Fiore. His brother and fellow Boy Talk member, Scott, relishes attention and wants to keep milking the cash cow. Keith isn't so sure. To build a complex and layered celebrity character, Straub again looked to New Kids on the Block. When she was in her late 20s, she saw McIntyre perform and realized he was so much more than the figurehead she had grown up loving. It was the first time where I was like, oh, that is a person. This is a person who has a complicated relationship with his life, Straub said. I would say that was the turning point for me, where I kept keeping an eye on New Kids on the Block, but my eye became more empathetic, where I was just like, oh, I see, it's not easy. This is not easy to do this, to have this career. She wanted to integrate what a life under the spotlight might be like. She had no idea, so she called up McIntyre. In a video posted to Instagram just weeks before the book launch, McIntyre praised Straub as my new bestie, an unboxed American Fantasy merch, complete with the purple boy band's hat. This is some really sexy book merch, he said in the video. In the comments, dedicated fans quickly identified Straub as the author, who had been poking around in fan Facebook pages or whom they'd met on a past cruise. Making friends with Joey McIntyre was a highlight of Straub's nostalgia trip around Planet Boy Band. I credit her foresight as a young fangirl. Could she ever have imagined this? It really did feel like I was a genius as a child, she quips. I had great taste. But American Fantasy is not New Kids on the Block fan fiction. nor is it a take on One Direction or NSYNC or any buzzy new K-pop group. The men of Boy Talk are archetypal pale, but delightfully universal. I wanted to make it so that if you had ever loved anything, really, another boy band for sure, that you would be able to see yourself reflected. That it's not age specific. It's not only for middle-aged women. It's for anyone who has ever loved something so deeply, Straub says. Train's Monahan reflects on the band's long journey. Pat Monahan is the lead singer of Train, a band that has sold more than 10 million albums and racked up billions of streams. 3 Train songs are part of Spotify's Billions Club. Hey Soul Sister reached 2 billion. But the 57-year-old who grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, as the youngest of 7 children, says there are still moments he feels insecure. I'm not in the biggest band in the world, but I feel like I am, and that's good enough. Monahan tells USA Today of his current mindset. We go out there and we make families happy, and that's a big deal. I've done some pretty cool things, and I just have to appreciate those parts, because it's hard enough to battle with the world, let alone yourself. Monahan has spent a good amount of time reflecting on the band's success. This summer, Train will tour to mark the 25th anniversary of the album Drops of Jupiter. The album, which was released on March 27, 2001, spawned a title track that won 2 Grammys and earned RIAA Diamond status, 10 times platinum. Life seems so slow when you're in traffic or you're on a train commute to your job or home, Monahan says. But man, this thing is moving so fast. And the fact that we are all on this planet for this very brief time. The only sadness that I get is that someday that will be gone. Of Train's 3 songs in Spotify's Billion Club, Drive By is the latest entry. Released on the band's 2012 album, California 37, the song was co-produced by Butch Walker, who now is a member of Train. Monahan recalls that he was asked to write a song for James Blunt. He teamed with the songwriting and production duo Espionage, and they wrote Drive By, exactly the way the final version was released. But Blunt didn't want the song, so Monahan kept it for Train. Monahan reveals the song was a story about meeting his wife, Amber. At the time, Monahan didn't think the timing was right for a relationship because his life was complicated. She was just like, we don't have to figure out tomorrow. Let's just hang out today, he continues. And so we just went with that. They married in 2006 and shared 2 kids, Autumn, 17, and Rock, 14. Monahan has 2 children from a previous marriage. Their oldest is looking at colleges. Meanwhile, Monahan's son will join his dad's band on tour this year. The teenager is looking to follow in his father's footsteps and counts Black Label Society's Zakk Wylde as his favorite guitarist. I don't need to nudge that guy, Monahan says of his son Rock. He's nudging me. He's fully engaged. With Train adding singer, songwriter, producer Walker, Pink, Avril Lavigne, Fall Out Boy into the fold, the band is working on its 12th studio album. The lead single, The Weekend, dropped in March. Monahan had hoped for the album to drop before the band tour kicks off in July. Billy Joel's documentary inspired me a lot, he says. He went from someone I admired to someone I think is the greatest American songwriter of all time. Monahan says watching the HBO Max doc inspired him to become even more personal with his songwriting. He hopes to eventually have at least 9 songs for the LP. Basically, it starts in San Francisco, playing at a place called Mad Dog in the Fog, Monahan says. That was a bar that we could go to and play for free. So there's a song called Mad Dog in the Fog, and it may be the album title. That's pretty much all Monahan will divulge about the next album. However, just like his band, the Mad Dog in the Fog is still up and running, serving in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury neighborhood all these years later. You are listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 50 minutes after the hour. U2's Easter Lily EP blossoms with faith and hope. The start of Lent prompted U2 to unleash Days of Ash on Ash Wednesday, a 5-song EP that pulsated with frustration and anger at the world. 6 weeks later, the band surprised fans again with Easter Lily, a sextet of new songs of faith, hope, and love, as Bono says in companion issue of U2's digital e-zine Propaganda available online. The EP arrived on Good Friday, an apt bookend to Days of Ash, with songs drenched in symbolism. The title, Easter Lily, is a nod to Patti Smith's 1978 album, Easter. Bono confirms in the e-zine. Bono's embrace of Christianity, his mother was Protestant, his father Catholic, has been a cornerstone of U2's music from the beginning, but so has questioning religion and reconciling faith in a world plagued by suffering. The closing song on Easter Lily, Coexist, I Will Bless the Lord at All Times, shares a name with the opening line of Psalm 34, but the question mark prompts introspection. These songs were birthed for this moment in time, designed for reflection with themes of friendship, forgiveness of self, and finding beauty in the darkness. It also is a reminder of what the band does best, nudging us to think while enveloping us in layers of chiming guitars and the steady heartbeat of a bass drum. It has been nearly a decade since U2's last full album of new material, 2017's Song of Experience, and Bono assures in the media material accompanying Easter Lily that the band is still working towards a noisy, messy, unreasonably colorful album to play live, which is where U2 lives. We will attempt hoopla and fanfare at a later date to remind the rest of the world we exist, but in the meantime, this is between you and us. Here is a look at U2's 6 new songs. Number 1, Song for Hal. It's rare the guitarist The Edge steps forward with a leading vocal, but he says in Propaganda that Bono felt strongly I should sing it, and for good reason. Edge says he started writing the song during the pandemic when he learned the death of a good friend and noted producer Hal Willner, also sketch music producer for Saturday Night Live from 1980 to 2020, from COVID. I swear, where music is made, you'll be there. Ed sings in what is both a lament and a celebration. His delicate guitar is a suitable complement to the honey-eyed notes he hits between lyrics such as You Never Took a Curtain Call and Can't Believe Another Day and Life Goes On as before. In a Life, U2 produced lyric videos for these new songs, and the one accompanying this mellifluous study of friendship and fellowship is worth watching for the vintage photos of the band throughout. Edge's guitar inches forward in the background, while Larry Mullen Jr. returned to full force behind his kit, prefers busy percussion as the song builds to a classic U2 styled chorus. Scars. Can't break what's already been broken, Bono sings over Adam Clayton's rumble of a bass line that anchors the song. Embracing imperfections and learning from past transgressions is the thematic backbone of the lyrics, which insist it's necessary to allow your past to shape your future. It's your scars that give you beauty, Bono sings before imploring, don't cover your scars. Resurrection Song. The uplift in Easter Lily is the best embodied here, as Edge's tiptoeing guitar beckons before rising in the Edge Iron way as Mullen emerges with steady thumps. If love is in the air, let's take a breath, Bono offers. If I sound ridiculous, I'm not done yet. Easter Parade. It's been a while since U2 produced a song that bursts like a sunrise that would be Beautiful Day in 2000. But this piano-tinged invocation for hope soars with repeated chorus on such a day. Repetition closes the song as well, with Bono singing Kyrie eleison as the music builds to a final climax before fading out on lovely piano chords. And last, Coexist. I will bless the Lord at all times. Part hymn, part lullaby. This soundscape, courtesy of Brian Eno, is a spellbinding palette of sound. Bono sings praise. I will bless the Lord at all times, a chorus that becomes hypnotic incantation. But the most affecting moment, both in song and on the album, comes at the end, with Bono singing a cappella, his voice catching on the final lines as the song ends cold. Guthrie is back to reading, not making headlines. Savannah Guthrie is back where millions have seen her countless times before, but nothing is the same. The Today Show anchor, long the joyful, steadfast face of the long-running morning show, has been absent for more than 2 months amid the disappearance of her mother, Nancy Guthrie, but now she's back. The journalist, 54, made her return to the NBC morning show on April 6th, clad in a yellow dress and with evident emotion. Surrounded by viewers wearing yellow ribbon stickers in honor of her missing mom and fans holding Welcome Back Savannah signs, Guthrie read the morning's biggest headlines. It's good to be home, she went on to tell co-anchor Craig Melvin, who said, it's good to have you back at home. Well, here we go. Ready or not, let's do the news, Guthrie added with a smile. Guthrie's mother has not been found, though the search continues. She was reported missing from her home in Arizona on February 1st. Authorities who have been searching for the 84-year-old since have said they believe she was taken from her home against her will. In February, the FBI released images showing a masked suspect at Guthrie's front door before she disappeared, and the individual in the images has not been identified. The horrifying series of events forced Savannah Guthrie, who has reported the news to millions every morning from Studio 1A since joining Today in 2011, to the center of one of the biggest news stories of the year. Her fans have her raw and emotional as she released tearful videos and interviews begging for her mother's return. As the days turned to weeks, turned to months, it became clear that Guthrie would have to make a decision about where her life would go from here, even without closure on her mother's fate. She chose to go back to her home and family on Today, as she described it. Here's what it was like watching her try to find normal in the morning news. In spite of the emotional turmoil Guthrie clearly is still experiencing, she has nothing but professional and poise during her return. There were brief moments where the audience could see it wasn't precisely back to normal. A high five with Melvin after the first hour, signs of support from fans outside the studio, and all the anchors wearing some form of yellow, to show their support of Guthrie. At 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time hour, the anchors, joined by Carson Daly and Al Roker, took a look at the 4 dozen or so viewers on Rockefeller Plaza to support Guthrie. "I'm excited to see them, give them all a hug," she said, her voice carrying emotion. "I've been really feeling the love so much. Thank you." At 8:30 a.m. mark, Guthrie and colleagues stepped outside and greeted her supporters. Melvin remarked that it's a special Monday morning because we're welcoming back our North Star. Guthrie then walked out and waved to the crowd while locking arms with Jenna Bush Hager. The pair could be seen sharing a long hug before stepping outside. But other than those small moments of irregularity, today went on as much as it does every day. There was the hard news, including a segment on the war in Iran and updates from the Artemis II space mission, and the pop culture tidbits such as clips from this weekend's Saturday Night Live. Guthrie and Bush Hager interviewed a doctor and author about the effects of perimenopause on women in their 30s and 40s, giving the audience helpful insights about this confusing time. The hours ticked by smoothly and without incident. It did feel indeed like Guthrie came home, and she was very welcome there. Guthrie returned to Today after an emotional interview with her longtime co-host Hoda Kotb, which aired on NBC in multiple parts starting March 26. She explained her decision to return in spite of the lack of progress in the search for Nancy. "It's hard to imagine doing it because it's such a place of joy and lightness," Guthrie said. "I can't come back and try to be something that I'm not, but I can't not come back because it's my family. I think it's part of my purpose right now. I want to smile. And when I do, it will be real. My joy will be my protest. My joy will be my answer. And being there is joyful." It's clear that Guthrie found that joy based on her demeanor on April 6th broadcast. She smiled, she laughed, and she expressed genuine emotion. Nothing felt fake or forced, and the show did not dwell on Guthrie's trauma more than was necessary. The anchor is a veteran newswoman and journalist, and her returning show was a definite way for her to remove herself from the center of headlines. One show back is a big milestone for Guthrie, but the real test will be waking up in the wee hours of the morning every weekday and continuing. She is far from the first member of the Today family to return from heartbreak, tragedy, and hardship, from cancer to the death of spouses, to mental health challenges. The hosts have experienced a large share of intense struggles over the years, but they have all returned with grace and determination to do their job. Based on her work so far, Guthrie seems like she will be ready for the long haul with Today, and the show will be better for it. You've been listening to a reading of the USA Today for Wednesday, April 8th, 2026. We read the USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your reader for this hour has been Nancy.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 18, The Conclusion of Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. Following that at 3 o'clock is Women's Health, and then 4 o'clock is a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.